Subscribe for more videos like this in the heart of the vast African savannas, where the golden grasses sway like waves under the warm breath of the sun, and where ancient baobab trees stand like silent giants guarding the secrets of centuries. There existed a village known by the elders as Kwalendoro, meaning the place where spirits walk. This village, though small and hidden from the eyes of the bustling world, was a place where every stone, every gust of wind, and every shadow carried a story older than memory itself. The people of Kwalendoro believed that the earth beneath their feet was alive, that it whispered ancient truths to anyone willing to listen, and that the stars above were the eyes of ancestors who watched over their every step. In this land of endless horizons lived a boy named Asante, a child whose curiosity was as deep as the dark rivers that cut through the wilderness, and whose spirit burned brighter than the desert sun. Asante was known throughout the village as the one who asked questions no one else dared ask, questions about the spirits, about the skies, about the old gods who once shaped the world with their breath. He would sit for hours beneath the giant baobab near the village square, tracing symbols in the dirt, trying to decipher what he believed were messages carried by the wind. The elders often shook their heads and murmured among themselves, saying that Asante had the soul of a wanderer, a spirit too restless to remain confined within the borders of ordinary life. But Asante's grandmother, old Mama Sua, saw something different in the boy. She said he carried the fire of their ancestors within him, a fire that would one day light a path no one had ever walked before. She told him stories of the Lion Guardian, a mythical creature said to live beyond the red hills in a land where night never fully settled and day never fully rose. According to legend, the Lion Guardian protected the bridge between the world of the living and the realm of spirits, and only those with pure hearts and fearless minds could witness him. Every night, Asante would listen to these tales as if drinking from a well of magic, his imagination soaring with visions of glowing lions, whispering forests, and rivers that carried the laughter of ancient gods. And although no one else in the village believed such stories to be more than fantasy, Asante felt a calling in his bones, a pull toward the unknown, a feeling that the world was preparing him for something far greater than anyone could imagine. The winds seemed to whisper his name, the trees seemed to bend toward him as he passed, and even the wild animals, antelopes, hyenas, and sometimes even elephants, would pause for a moment as if acknowledging a destiny written long before he was born. It was on one such warm evening, when the sky blazed in shades of red and purple, that Asante felt a strange tremor beneath the earth, a trembling like the heartbeat of a sleeping giant slowly awakening. The birds scattered from the trees before he even stood up. Mama Sua, who was grinding herbs at the doorway of her hut, froze and listened with wide eyes, for she too sensed the shift in the air. That night she called Asante close, her voice trembling with both fear and pride, and whispered the words that would change his life forever. The spirits have opened a path for you, Asante. Something ancient is awakening, and it is calling your name. Those words echoed through Asante's heart like a drumbeat, igniting within him a flame he could no longer ignore. The following morning arrived with an unusual heaviness, as though the sky itself carried a secret too burdensome to hold alone. A mist rolled over Kwalendoro like a soft, white blanket, swallowing the outlines of the huts and turning the familiar pathways into ghostly trails that shimmered in the early light. The elders gathered near the sacred fire pit, where flames had never once died in 100 years, and they whispered among themselves about the strange tremor that had shaken the earth the evening before. They believed that such tremors were not accidents of nature, but signs from the unseen world, warnings that the balance between mortals and spirits had shifted in ways too subtle for ordinary eyes to see. Asante walked through the village quietly that morning, feeling the mist cling to his skin like cold fingers and hearing distant, hollow echoes as though the mountains themselves were murmuring ancient riddles. Every sound seemed sharper, every shadow seemed deeper, every breath of wind felt like a message he was supposed to understand. Even the goats bleated nervously, the chickens refused to scatter from their coops, and the dogs, usually loud and energetic, sat still with raised fur, staring toward the distant red hills. Mama Sua called Asante to her side once more, her old eyes glowing with a mixture of fear and fierce determination. "My child," she said, placing her trembling hand over his heart, "when the earth speaks, it is not the elders who must listen first, it is the one whose destiny is tied to its voice. The spirits chose you long before you were born, Asante, and now they are waiting." Her words fell over him like a heavy cloak, filling him with both pride and uncertainty. He wanted to ask what the spirits wanted, why they had chosen him, and what path had been opened before him, but Mama Sua simply shook her head, saying that destiny never reveals its full shape until the feet begin to walk. As they spoke, a sudden gust of wind tore through the village, swirling the mist into spirals and carrying with it a low, distant roar. Deep, rumbling, and unmistakably alive. Every villager froze where they stood. Children clung to their mothers, elders bowed their heads, and even the warriors felt their courage shrink. It was not the roar of any animal known to man. It was older, fuller, a sound that carried the weight of forgotten legends. Asani felt the roar vibrate through his bones, tugging at something buried deep inside him. His breath quickened, his hands shook, and his heart raced with a wild, unfamiliar rhythm, as though a second heartbeat, one not his own, had awakened within him. "The Lion Guardian," Mama Sua whispered, her voice barely audible. "He has risen from his silent realm, and he does not rise without purpose." The villagers turned their wide eyes toward Asante, for they all knew the old stories, and they knew that when the Guardian awakened, it meant the spirits had chosen someone to stand at the threshold between worlds. Asante felt their gazes burn into him, not with anger, but with a mixture of hope, fear, and desperate expectation. He wanted to run, to hide, to escape the weight of a destiny he did not yet understand, but the invisible force that pulled him forward only grew stronger with each passing moment. Mama Sua lifted his chin gently and spoke with a calmness that steadied his trembling heart. "Do not fear what seeks you, my child. The world does not choose the strong. It chooses the willing. And if you walk the path laid before you with truth in your spirit, even the fiercest shadows will bow to your light." Asante swallowed hard, feeling the first sparks of courage flicker within him. The mist slowly parted, revealing the distant outline of the red hills glowing in the newborn sun. A faint golden shimmer flickered on the horizon, like the distant reflection of a lion's mane catching the light. The villagers gasped softly, and Asante knew, without anyone telling him, that the journey had already begun. Asante stepped forward slowly, drawn by the shimmering glow on the horizon, but every part of Kuala Ndoro seemed determined to stop him, not with force, but with memories. Each hut he passed whispered stories of the people who lived within, stories woven from laughter, sorrow, and old traditions that shaped the village like roots, shaping the earth. He passed the drum maker's hut, where rows of carved drums sat silently, their skins stretched tight, as though holding their breath. He remembered how those drums once guided every celebration and every prayer, sending messages across valleys with rhythms that carried the heartbeat of the ancestors. Today, however, the drums seemed afraid to speak, as if sensing that something greater than any festival or ceremony was unfolding. Further along the path, Asante saw the ancient Irako tree, its branches stretching toward the sky like arms longing for forgotten gods. Elders often said that the Irako had stood there since the beginning of time, watching over generations as they lived and died beneath its shadow. Asante paused beneath it, feeling a deep, resonant tremor spread through his chest, as though the tree was acknowledging him, recognizing him as the child foretold in long-buried legends. The villagers gathered behind him slowly, forming a hesitant, frightened procession. No one dared to speak. Women held babies close to their chests, as though fearing the world might change before their children's eyes. Warriors gripped their spears tightly, even though every man knew no spear could pierce a spirit or frighten away a guardian born from ancient realms. Children peeked from behind their mothers, staring at Asante as if he were both a hero and a mystery wrapped into one. The air felt heavier with each step he took, and even the birds had stopped singing, leaving the village wrapped in a soundless tension that stretched like a thin thread ready to snap. Then, from somewhere far beyond the red hills, a single horn echoed, soft at first, then rising into a haunting call that made the air vibrate. It was not a horn made by human hands, but one carried by the winds of the spirit world, announcing that a doorway between realms had opened. Mama Sua slowly approached Asani again, her feet dragging slightly as though every step carried the weight of a lifetime. She placed a bundle in his hands, wrapped in old animal hide decorated with faded tribal symbols. "This belonged to your father," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "He walked a path similar to yours long before you were born. He, too, heard the call of the Lion Guardian. But the spirits did not allow him to return." Asani's breath caught in his throat. He had grown up hearing little about his father, a man who vanished before Asante could walk, leaving only stories scattered like broken shells along the memory of the village. Opening the bundle slowly, Asante found an amulet glowing faintly with golden light, shaped like a lion's eye. Warmth pulsed from the amulet into his palm, sending a surge of strength through his entire body. It felt alive, watching him, choosing him. An uneasy silence fell over the villagers, broken only by the crackle of the sacred fire as it flared suddenly, rising high into the sky. The flames twisted and curled into the shape of a lion's head, roaring without sound, its fiery mane flowing like rivers of molten gold. Many villagers fell to their knees, bowing their heads in fear. Some whispered prayers, others trembled. But Asante stood motionless, staring at the fiery apparition as the amulet in his hand glowed brighter and brighter until its light reflected in his eyes. The lion-shaped flames slowly lowered their gaze onto him, as though measuring his spirit, judging whether he was worthy of carrying the destiny that had destroyed his father. Asani felt neither fear nor pride, only a deep, almost painful sense of responsibility. He knew then that whatever lay ahead was bigger than him, bigger than Kwalendoro, bigger even than the stories carved into the bones of the earth. The flames suddenly collapsed inward, disappearing into a single spark that shot upward into the sky, leaving nothing but rising smoke curling toward the heavens. The amulet dimmed, but remained warm in Asani's palm. Mama Sua whispered one final warning. "Destiny has called you, Asani, but destiny does not guarantee survival. Walk with wisdom, walk with truth, and guard your heart. For the path to greatness is also the path of sacrifice." Asante nodded, feeling the weight of those words settle deep within him. He took a slow, steady breath, turned toward the red hills glowing faintly beneath the rising sun, and began the journey that would lead him toward the unknown, toward truth, danger, and the spirit of the Lion Guardian that had awakened after centuries of silence. The sun hung low over the quiet village, spreading a warm orange light across the fields that had fed generations. Yet Jabari barely noticed the beauty around him. His eyes were fixed far beyond the horizon, toward the places he had only heard about in travelers' stories, cities filled with tall buildings, shiny cars, and money that seemed to flow like river water after the rains. He stood near the edge of the farmland, his hands curled into tight fists. "How long must I struggle like this?" he muttered under his breath. "How long must I wait for a life that others are already living?" Behind him, the ancestral land stretched wide and fertile, cared for by Mama Deka with patience and love. But to Jabari, the fields felt like chains tying him down. Every day, he saw his mother bending over the soil, working like the land owed her something. And every day, he felt a growing storm inside him, a hunger for more, a hunger for wealth that the village life could never satisfy. Mama Deka's voice floated softly behind him. "My son," she said, her tone warm but tired, "the land is our blessing. It has carried our family for generations. You must learn to honor it." Jabari didn't turn around. "Mama," he replied, trying to hide his frustration, "honor cannot buy a new life. Honor cannot fill empty pockets." The wind carried his words across the fields, as though the ancestors themselves were listening. "Now we continue building the scene, but I need one small guiding detail, so the next part stays aligned with your vision." In the days that followed, Kofi walked through the wide stretches of his father's land with a slow, deliberate step, as if every footprint he pressed into the warm earth was a reminder of something he believed belonged to him. The fields whispered with tall golden grasses, the mango trees swayed gently as if greeting an old friend, and the distant hills curved like the backs of sleeping giants. To Kofi, every corner of this land spoke his name. It was as if the soil itself remembered him, remembered how he ran barefoot through it as a boy, how he gathered fallen branches, how he helped his father plant the first rows of cassava when he was still too young to lift a full basket. As he breathed in the familiar scents, the dampness of river stones, the dryness of the savanna wind, he felt something heavy stir in his chest. It wasn't anger, not yet. It was certainty. A certainty so deep it felt carved into his bones. This land is mine. Not by luck, not by chance, and certainly not by the favor of other people's opinions. It was his because he had labored on it, because he had grown up with its rhythms, because he knew every hidden path through the tall grass, every ant mound, every tree that leaned slightly to the east. He remembered the stories his father once told him when he was small enough to sit on his knees. Stories of ancestors who claimed land through courage, through sweat, through perseverance. His father had pointed toward the horizon and said, "Kofi, a man earns land by being its keeper, not its master." And Kofi took those words into his heart like sacred fire. For years he worked, believing he was becoming the keeper his father spoke of. But now everything felt uncertain. Now Jabari had entered the picture again, and with him came a shift that Kofi could not understand. Jabari walked the land with ease, as if his absence had never mattered. The villagers talked about Jabari with respect. Even their father seemed gentler when he spoke Jabari's name. And each time Kofi overheard it, that certainty in his chest tightened, twisted, and whispered, "What if they give him what should be yours?" Kofi tried to suppress the feeling, tried to swallow it like bitter herbs, but it rose again and again. When he saw Jabari laughing with the elders, when he watched their father resting his hand on Jabari's shoulder, when he saw the way the younger children followed Jabari as if he were already the chosen one. At night Kofi lay awake, staring up at the woven roof of the hut. The moonlight spilled across the walls in thin silver lines, and each one felt like a crack forming inside him. He asked himself questions that grew darker with each passing hour. Why should Jabari return after years away and be treated as though nothing had changed? Why should he, Kofi, who stayed, who worked, who carried the family burdens, why should he have to share the land? His mind replayed every moment of his life. The blistered hands, the early mornings, the long days under the sun, the nights he stayed awake listening to the goats in case predators came. And each memory became fuel for a quiet fire burning deeper within. He tried to convince himself he wasn't jealous, just justified, just rightful, just claiming what had always been meant to be his. But jealousy is clever. It disguises itself in noble words. It speaks in the voice of fairness, logic, and even duty. And Kofi, unaware of its creeping vines, allowed it to root itself inside him. One afternoon, as Kofi stood near the riverbank, he pressed his hand into the soil. The earth was cool beneath his palm. "I have given you everything," he whispered, his voice trembling with a mix of devotion and frustration. "I have been loyal to you. Why does no one else see it?" A bird perched on a nearby branch, watching him silently. The river burbled on, indifferent to his struggle. The world did not answer. But within Kofi, something did. A quiet resolve. A dangerous resolve. If they cannot see the truth, he thought, then I must make them see. The land around him seemed to darken as the sun dipped low on the horizon, casting long shadows across the ground. And in those shadows, Kofi's thoughts began to twist into shapes that would lead him down a path he could never return from. His belief was no longer just belief. It was obsession. The sun hung low over the small village of Doma, painting the clay huts with warm gold as evening drums echoed in the distance. Smoke from cooking fires curled softly into the sky, carrying the scent of roasted maize and damp earth. In the heart of this village stood the old compound of Mama Deka, a strong widow whose hands had shaped every inch of the fertile land she treasured. The villagers often said her land was blessed, the soil dark as midnight, the crops tall as proud warriors. But inside that compound, trouble was growing like a storm cloud. Mama Decca sat on her wooden stool near the doorway, her back straight, her wrapper tied tight around her waist. Her eyes, though tired, held the wisdom of many seasons. She rubbed the soil between her fingers as if seeking answers from the ancestors. Footsteps approached, heavy, impatient ones. It was Jabari, tall and restless, with eyes always drifting toward dreams of city wealth. Behind him walked Kofi, quiet but tense, his jaw hard, his fists tight. Though he said little, his heart burned like hot coals. Jabari spoke first, his voice sharp. "Mother, we cannot wait anymore. This land is wasting under old traditions. I need my part now. I want to build something great, something modern." Mama Decca did not look up. She let the soil fall slowly from her hand. "My son, the land of our ancestors is not a piece of cloth you cut whenever you please." Jabari frowned. "But why must we wait until you are gone? Are we not your sons? Do we not deserve our share?" Kofi stepped forward, his voice low but tight with emotion. "Mother, I have worked these fields more than anyone. I rise before the roosters. I know every route, every path. Should I not receive what I have earned?" Mama Decca finally raised her eyes to them. Her gaze was steady, filled with a mixture of love and disappointment. "Children, you speak as if my breath has already left my body. Is this how quickly the wind carries away a mother's worth?" The brothers looked away, but the anger in them did not fade. She continued, her voice firm like the trunk of an old baobab tree. "In this village, inheritance comes when life has completed its circle. A child who snatches fruit before its time eats bitterness, not sweetness." Jabari clicked his tongue. "These old sayings will not build my future," Kofi muttered, "and they will not give me what I deserve." Mama Decca stood. The evening light caught the wrinkles on her face, each one a story of struggle, hunger, survival, and love. "My sons, listen to me. Greed blinds the eyes. Jealousy poisons the heart. I warn you, land taken wrongly carries a curse. The earth hears all things, even the whispers of those who plot." The wind blew softly across the compound, rustling the leaves of the small mango tree. But her words seemed to fly past her sons like dry leaves in harmattan. Jabari shook his head. "I will not wait. I will take what should be mine." Kofi's voice cracked with frustration. "And I will not be cheated while others chase big city dreams." Mama Decca's heart tightened. She stepped closer to them. "My children, do not let hunger for land tear you apart. A family divided cannot stand before the ancestors." But the warning fell unnoticed.